Good morning, yogis. Today is our back bend day. We're going to do a lot of easy and possibly intense back bends depending on your practice with back bends so far. So before we get started, I just want to talk quickly about your lower back, your iliosacral joint, which tends to be where most people have lower back issues. It's where I have the occasional lower back issue myself. And I find it really important for people to understand what usually causes that. And back bends can aggravate mine. For example, I know when I go into upward facing dog and I don't properly adjust my lower back, then I'll be sore the next day. So my back will hurt a little bit. A really easy way for me to avoid this is to do the action of tucking your tailbone. And so we've done cat and cow poses before. It's basically going into cat position with your lower spine. So when you're on all fours, you go into cat position, you kind of tuck your hips in and you round your upper back. So don't round your upper back, but tuck your hips in, and that's the action you want to use to protect your lower back in back bends. So whether you're doing cobra pose or upward facing dog or any of the poses we're going to talk about today, this will help you protect your lower back. It'll help protect your iliosacral joint. So if you already have issues with that joint, you may want to skip these poses altogether or do very slight variations of them. So modify as necessary to make sure that you are not going to further injure your back, and make sure that you tuck your tailbone, as I just showed you, to protect your back. So the first pose we're going to go through is Shalabhasana, Locust pose. Probably the easiest of the back bends we're going to go through today. So we're going to lay onto our stomachs. And so there's a couple different arm variations we can do. We can do it Bikram style, where we shove our hands completely underneath and try and bring our elbows together. This, for me, aggravates my elbows a little bit, but I tend to do it anyways just because I like to get the extra flexibility in my biceps. And then we're going to place our chin down on the mat. So another hand variation is you could just put it to the side here or put it in closer. It's really up to you on this one, whatever's comfortable for you. So we're going to put our chin onto the mat. We're going to tuck our tailbone and inhale, lift our legs up. And exhale, lower them back down. So that's Shalabhasana, Locust pose. That's the first of the four poses I'm going to show you today. So remember to hold your chin firm onto the mat, and you're trying to put your weight essentially onto your upper body, your upper chest, and onto your chin and onto your hands, obviously. So the ideal position, or what some people believe is the ideal position, is to bring your elbows all the way together. So for me, that's not completely accessible. So I'm usually somewhere around here. If you feel more comfortable being out here or out here, even having your arms to the side while doing this pose, do whatever's comfortable for your body. The second pose we're going to go through today is called Dhanurasana, or bow pose. So in bow pose, we also go onto our stomach. We're going to reach our hands back. Remember to tuck your tailbone. We're going to bend at the knees and grab our ankles. And as we inhale, we're going to curl our chest forward and press out through our legs. So right now my legs are about hip-width apart from each other. Ankles are about the same distance as well. And the idea is to pull with your legs as much as possible and pull your hands at the same time. And exhale, lower yourself back out of this pose. So that one, we're also going to do the upside down variation of that, which is bow pose or Urdhva Dhanurasana. But before we do that, I really wanted to talk to you about Camal and bridge pose. So Camal, if you're not familiar with, is another pretty extreme back bend, but there's some really good variations, really easy variations to help protect your lower back in this position. So in Camal, we're going to come onto our hands and knees. We're going to come to our knees. we want to take our hands and place them like they're in our back pockets. Remember, we're going to tuck our tailbone as we do in all of our back bends. And then we're just going to inhale, lengthen our spine. And as we exhale, we're just going to roll ourselves back. So the idea is to keep your legs and hips pressed forward. So if you were against a wall here, this would be flat against the wall as the actual curving motion occurs into your mid to upper back. And so if this is easy for you, you can tuck your feet under, reach for your ankles, and continue going. If this is also very easy for you, and make sure you take this very slow to protect yourself, you can put your legs all the way down, bring your feet all the way flat on the ground, one at a time. Put your hands back on your ankles. Remember to tuck your tailbone the entire time. And so to come onto this, we're going to do the exact opposite thing that we did to come into it. We're going to place our hands under our lower back, shift forward, and slowly curl ourselves back up. And so if you come out of that pose, sorry, my head was a little chopped off there. If you come out of your pose too quickly, you might get a little bit lightheaded in that position. The last pose we're going to talk about is bridge and then upward facing bow, also known as wheel pose. So bridge is usually a warm-up variation for wheel pose. I'm going to go through that first. So we're going to lay on our backs. Put your feet about hip width apart and about, I will say, 5 3/4 inches away from your butt. So the back of the heels are about that far away from your butt. What we're going to do here is, again, tuck that tailbone under to protect your lower back. I feel like I've said this a lot, but I really can't iterate that point enough. Is to say, to protect that lower back, you really need to tuck that tailbone. It's extremely important. It'll help alleviate and prevent any lower back issues. So from here, we're going to inhale, lift our hips up. And so if this is as far as you can go in this position, or in this pose, that's fine. Just do it here. If you can go a little bit further, what we're going to do is clasp our hands together behind our back, roll our shoulders underneath our chest, and you can see we start to round our chest. You want to keep your gaze looking at the ceiling the entire time. The idea is to put your chest in a position as though it's parallel to the wall or perpendicular to the floor. To come out of this, we're going to clasp our hands, exhale, and just roll ourselves back down, slowly lowering our hips down. So a more difficult version of this, so that was bridge, is called Urdhva Dhanurasana, or upward facing bow. For this, we are going to reach our hands perfectly straight up, and we're going to bend at the elbows and bring our hands next to our ears. So we can bring them right next to our ears, but it tends to be a little bit easier for most people to have them a little bit away from your ears, maybe 2 or 3 inches away from your ears. So bend at the elbows, bring those hands down. If you cannot bring your hands all the way down, so if you're tight in the wrists, you might want to have a blanket or a wedge or something like that to help protect your wrists, because we're going to put a lot of weight onto the wrists. So you may need to, depending on your wrist flexibility, you may need to warm up your wrists a little bit before you can do this pose, or wedge, roll blanket, something like that. So we're going to bend at the elbows, place our hands down. We want our elbows to face up towards the ceiling, and we kind of want to squeeze them into each other, but not completely over your head. So you should be able to see straight above you, and you should be able to see your elbows going straight up as well. This will help protect your elbows when you go into the pose. So from here, we're going to, and you can just hold this for an exhale, and then when we inhale again, we're going to press ourselves all the way up. Remember to keep your elbows facing directly towards the ceiling. Now it's extremely important here to maintain the distance between your legs, roughly hip width apart. You want to straighten the arms as much as possible, and I am tucking my tailbone Actually, my main focus here is on tucking my tailbone because this is a pretty deep back bend. And if I don't tuck my tailbone or focus on tucking my tailbone the entire time, I'm going to injure myself. So to come out of this, we're going to lower ourselves down, curl back, rest our upper back, and lower our hips onto the mat. So this is a very difficult pose. If you've never done it before, make sure you follow the cues and read the cues as well to make sure that you enter it and exit in a safe position. If you're not feeling like you have the strength to be able to push yourself all the way up, you can come to the top of your head. So you'll bend your elbows, place your hands down, you'll tuck your tailbone, lift your hips, and then you'll lift just enough to get on the top of your head. Don't put a lot of weight onto the top of your head, and do not turn your head while you have weight on it. And you just hold yourself here, and then come out the same way by tucking your chin into your chest, lowering your upper back, and lowering your lower back. So we've just gone over a lot of back bends, and our back's going to be really tight. And so what we want to do is we want to relieve that tightness. So we're going to bring our feet about mat width apart, and we're going to let our knees just knock into each other, and we're just going to lay here. So I would lay here 5-6 breaths, something like that. At least you can lay here for 30 seconds up to a minute. We're just trying to relieve that tension we just caused in our lower back. So after relaxing here for a good amount of time, we can then do a gentle twist. So straighten both your legs all the way out. Bend your right leg. And you want to bring your knee up to your shoulder, but not all the way up to your shoulder. So you want to bend it. You want to twist your leg over. You want to maintain both your shoulder blades on the mat. For a little bit of extra stretch, you can place your hand on your knee and press down a little bit. Bring your arm out to the side and look over your shoulder. Hold this for a couple of breaths, and you're going to inhale yourself back up. Straighten that leg. Do the exact same thing on the other side. So we're bending at the knee a little bit more than 90 degrees, so we're bringing this a little bit higher than 90 degrees. We're rotating our body over, keeping this shoulder flat onto the mat. And we're bringing that knee up and over towards the shoulder. Using this hand over here to press down on my knee to get a little bit better stretch. And then look over the shoulder. So if you're super flexible, you can actually straighten this leg. If this is really tight for you and you only get this far, that's fine. Just make sure you maintain that shoulder blade contact with the mat the entire time. So that's a great way of relieving your lower back after doing back bends. So to come up off the mat, we want to kind of do it in a relaxed fashion. We can just roll over and just hang out here for however long you want. And kind of just relax a little bit and slowly press yourself up. Let your head be the last thing that comes up. If you have any questions, feel free to post up. Enjoy.